The massive Imperial warship, Star Sovereign, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of an unremarkable solar system. Its golden hull gleamed under the distant sun's light, a testament to the Empire's love for grandeur even in their military vessels. Commander Marcus stood on the bridge, his perfectly pressed uniform reflecting his rigid military bearing. "My lord," reported his sensor officer, "we've detected artificial structures in orbit around the third planet." Marcus smiled. Another primitive civilization to add to the Empire's collection. They had done this hundreds of times before. Find a developing world, show overwhelming force, and add them to the ever-growing list of tribute-paying planets. But something was different this time. The sensor officer's voice wavered as he continued, "Sir, there appear to be warships. A lot of them." Marcus walked to the main display, his boots clicking against the polished floor. The holographic screen showed dozens of vessels arranged in a loose defensive formation around the blue planet. Their designs were unusual, blocky, functional, and lacking the sleek aesthetic the Empire preferred. "Primitive nuclear drives," scoffed Marcus after studying the readouts. "Probably their first ventures into space. Send the standard submission demand. Let's get this over with." The communications officer transmitted the Empire's time-tested message. "Kneel before the might of the Galactic Empire. Your technology is inferior. Your defense is meaningless. Submit now and become part of the greatest civilization in the galaxy." Aboard the human flagship Terran Dawn, Admiral James Wilson sat in his command chair, reading reports on his tablet. When the Imperial message came through, he glanced up at his communications officer. "Put it on speakers," he said, taking a sip from his coffee mug. The message played. For a moment, silence filled the bridge. Then someone snickered. Another officer coughed to hide a laugh. Within seconds, the entire bridge crew was struggling to maintain their composure. Wilson set down his coffee, wiping tears from his eyes. "Oh my God, they're serious," he managed between chuckles. "They actually think those fancy golden ships impress us." His second-in-command, Commander Roberts, was bent over her console, shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. "Should we show them our actual scanning capabilities, sir? They're still using plasma conduits for their main power grid." "No, no." Wilson held up a hand, finally regaining control. "Let's play this straight. Response mode alpha. The let them figure it out themselves protocol." Roberts grinned. "Oh, this is going to be fun." Back on the Imperial flagship, Marcus was growing impatient. Why haven't they responded with their surrender? "Sir," his communications officer frowned at his display. "We're receiving." Laughter. And a text message that just says, "You might want to reconsider." Marcus's face turned red with anger. How dare these primitives mock the Empire? He studied the human ships again. Such simple designs, clearly nuclear-powered vessels with basic weaponry. Their scans showed nothing more advanced than fission reactors and chemical weapons. "Prepare main batteries," he ordered. "We'll show them what true power looks like." The Empire's dreadnought moved into attack position, its golden hull now bristling with weapon ports. The human fleet didn't react, maintaining their relaxed formation. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, puzzled. "The humans. They're still laughing. I'm picking up open communications between their ships. They're treating this like some kind of entertainment." Marcus gripped the railing of his command platform until his knuckles turned white. In all his years serving the Empire, he had never encountered such a response to their arrival. Fear. Yes. Awe. Always. But laughter. What he didn't know, what his primitive sensors couldn't tell him, was that those simple-looking human ships were far more than they appeared, and he was about to learn a very important lesson about judging books by their covers. "Fire at will," Marcus commanded, sealing his fate. The first shots would soon be fired, but not with the outcome the Empire expected. After all, those weren't really nuclear drives they were detecting. Those were just the power sources for the ship's coffee makers. The massive golden dreadnought of the Empire hung in space like an angry wasp, its weapon ports glowing with building energy. Commander Marcus watched with satisfaction as his ship's plasma cannons charged to full power. These primitives would learn respect the hard way. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, targeting systems locked on their flagship, energy levels at maximum. The first salvo of plasma bolts streaked across space, brilliant purple streams of destructive energy that had brought countless civilizations to their knees. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. This would be over quickly. But aboard the Terran Dawn, Admiral Wilson hadn't even bothered to stand up from his chair. He watched the incoming plasma fire on the main screen while sipping his fresh coffee. "Should we at least pretend to be worried, sir?" Commander Roberts asked, trying to keep a straight face. "Nah." Wilson waved his free hand. "Let's see how long it takes them to figure it out. Anyone want to start a betting pool?" The plasma bolts reached the human fleet. Instead of the expected explosions and destruction, they simply fizzled out. The energy dispersed harmlessly against shields that weren't even visible to Imperial sensors. Back on the Star Sovereign, Marcus's jaw dropped. What just happened?" "Sir, our weapons had no effect." The weapons officer frantically checked his readings. "The energy just disappeared." "I don't understand. Our scans showed only basic defensive capabilities." Marcus gripped his command rail harder. "Impossible." Fire again. Full spread this time. The Empire's flagship unleashed its entire arsenal. Hundreds of plasma bolts filled space, painting the void in deadly purple light. The human ships sat there, completely unmoved, as every shot dissipated harmlessly against their invisible defenses. On the Terran Dawn's bridge, the crew had started eating popcorn. Someone had even brought out fold-up chairs. "Look at their energy readings spike," one officer commented, munching on his snack. "They must be so confused right now." Wilson checked his watch. "All right, maybe we should give them a hint before they blow out their power grid trying to hurt us. Lieutenant, show them just a tiny bit of what we can do." The smallest ship in the human fleet, a patrol craft no bigger than a destroyer, moved slightly forward. A barely visible ripple of energy pulsed from its bow. Something so subtle it looked like a mere distortion in space. The Empire's mighty shields, which had withstood the weapons of 100 conquered races, flickered and died instantly. Panic erupted on the Imperial bridge. "Shields down," screamed the defensive officer. "All power systems destabilizing." But they didn't even fire a real weapon. Marcus stared in horror at his readings. That small pulse had bypassed every defense they had, somehow reaching right into their power systems and shutting them down with surgical precision. His mighty dreadnought now floated helpless in space. "Sir," his communications officer said in a shaky voice, "we're receiving a message from the humans." On the main screen, Admiral Wilson appeared, still sitting casually in his chair, coffee in hand. "Those were some impressive light shows you put on there," he said with a friendly smile. "But maybe we should talk before you strain your engines any further. I'd hate to see you blow a fuse." Marcus could only stare as his worldview crumbled around him. The supposedly primitive ships he'd dismissed were suddenly revealed as something far more dangerous, and whatever weapons they possessed were so advanced that his best sensors couldn't even understand them. "Oh, and by the way," Wilson added, "those nuclear signatures you detected, that's just our kitchen equipment. We find that old-fashioned microwave ovens make the best coffee. The actual engines," he grinned, "well, let's just say they operate on slightly different principles." As the human admiral spoke, Marcus noticed something even more terrifying on his tactical display. More human ships were appearing out of nowhere, their advanced stealth systems deactivating to reveal a fleet 10 times larger than what they'd initially seen. The Empire had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't found a primitive civilization to conquer. They had stumbled into the territory of someone far more advanced than themselves. And judging by the continued laughter coming from the human ships, this was going to be a very long day. Commander Marcus stood frozen on his powerless bridge, watching more human ships appear from nowhere. His mighty golden dreadnought, the pride of the Imperial fleet, floated helplessly in space. The worst part wasn't the failure of their weapons, or even their dead shields. It was the constant sound of human laughter coming through their still-working communication system. "My lord," his second-in-command whispered, "what are your orders?" Before Marcus could answer, more Imperial ships jumped into the system. 3 battle cruisers, responding to their distress signal, emerged from hyperspace with weapons ready. "This is Admiral Reed of the Imperial Battle Group 7. A new voice boomed through the command channel. "We're here to assist. Beginning attack pattern Delta." Wilson's voice came through immediately after, still sounding amused. "Oh, look. More visitors. Someone tell the kitchen to make extra coffee." The 3 Imperial battle cruisers moved into attack formation, their weapons charging. They were newer ships, equipped with the Empire's latest quantum pulse cannons, weapons that could crack planets in half. "Final warning," Admiral Reed announced. "Surrender now or face total destruction." The response from the human fleet was unexpected. Instead of fear or defiance, they heard elevator music. The humans had put them on hold. On the Terran dawn, Wilson had stood up for the first time, stretching lazily. "Well, I guess we should probably show them what we can actually do, just to avoid any unfortunate accidents." He turned to his weapons officer. "Jimmy, why don't you give them a little demonstration? Nothing too fancy. Use the training weapons. The ones we give to our cadets." Jimmy grinned, pressing a few buttons on his console. "That seems fair." A single human destroyer, no larger than a cargo ship, moved forward. A small bubble of distorted space appeared at its bow, no bigger than a tennis ball. The Imperial sensors couldn't even detect it properly. Their computers registered it as an error in the display. The bubble shot forward, passing through the lead battle cruiser's shields like they didn't exist. It touched the hull, and the entire massive ship turned into a giant balloon animal shaped like a space duck. Admiral Reed's voice cracked as he reported what happened. Our flagship. It's... Don't worry," Wilson replied cheerfully. "The effect only lasts about an hour. Though I have to say, the duck shape is new. Our cadets are getting creative with their pranks these days." The remaining Imperial ships tried to retreat, but before they could activate their engines, more bubbles shot out from the human fleet. Within seconds, one battle cruiser had been transformed into a giant origami crane, and the other found itself rebuilt into a massive pizza delivery ship, complete with a neon 30 minutes or it's free sign glowing on its hull. Marcus watched in horror as the mighty Imperial fleet was turned into an art project by weapons he couldn't even understand. His own powerless ship remained untouched, giving him a perfect view of the humiliation. "Now then," Wilson's voice turned slightly more serious, though amusement still lingered in his tone. "Should we discuss terms, or would you prefer to wait and see what our actual military-grade weapons do?" The Empire's sensors finally managed to get a partial reading on the human fleet's power output. The readings made no sense. According to their instruments, even the smallest human ships were producing enough energy to power a small star. "Those are their training weapons," Marcus's science officer muttered, staring at his readings in disbelief. "Weapons they give to students." "It's quite simple," Wilson explained, having overheard the comment. "We could have destroyed your ships, but why waste the opportunity for a good teaching moment? Your empire needs to learn that the galaxy is a much bigger place than you thought. Also," he chuckled, "our cadets needed the target practice." As Marcus looked out at his transformed fleet, a duck, a crane, and a pizza delivery ship, he realized that the Empire had made more than just a tactical error. They had walked into the domain of a civilization so advanced that they treated planetary destruction weapons as toys and combat as an amusing diversion. And somehow, that was far more terrifying than facing an angry enemy. As Marcus stared at his transformed fleet, still featuring a duck, a crane, and a pizza delivery ship, his science team worked frantically to understand what they were dealing with. The human ships continued to generate power readings that broke every law of physics the Empire knew. "Sir," his chief scientist called out, his voice shaking. "You need to see these readings." The main screen displayed a complex analysis of the human fleet. Every scan they ran revealed something more impossible than the last. The Empire's most advanced sensors couldn't even begin to understand how these ships operated. "Their hull material," the scientist explained. It's absorbing our scans and turning them into power. The more we scan them, the stronger they become. And those engines, they're not using any fuel we can detect. It's like they're creating energy from nothing." Admiral Wilson's voice came through again, making everyone jump. "Oh, are you trying to figure out how our ships work? Here, let me help." A data packet arrived in their systems. When they opened it, it was a crayon drawing of a stick-figure spaceship with the label "Space Goes Vroom." Wilson's laughter filled the bridge. "Sorry, couldn't resist. That's from my 6-year-old daughter's science project. She's still learning the basics of quantum realm manipulation." Marcus's face turned red. "Your children learn quantum realm manipulation?" "Well, yes," Wilson replied casually. "It's part of basic education. Right after they learn to tie their shoes, and before they start on dimensional folding. Though honestly, some kids struggle more with the shoelaces." The Empire's sensors suddenly detected a new energy signature. A small door had opened on the side of the Terran Dawn. What emerged wasn't a weapon or a fighter. It was a food delivery drone. "Hope you don't mind," Wilson said, "but we ordered pizza. Real pizza, not from your transformed ship over there. Would you like some? We got extra." The delivery drone zipped through space, completely ignoring the laws of physics. It passed through solid hull material like it wasn't there, appearing directly on the Imperial Bridge. A hot, fresh pizza box sat on top of it, along with paper plates and napkins. Marcus's security team drew their weapons, but the drone just beeped happily and opened its box, releasing the smell of perfectly cooked pepperoni pizza. "How?" Marcus stared at the drone. "How did it pass through our hull?" "Oh, that." Wilson sounded like he was explaining something obvious. "It's just basic matter phase shifting. The delivery drones have to be able to deliver anywhere. Can't let silly things like solid walls get in the way of hot pizza." The chief scientist was now crying softly over his readings. "Sir, that drone, its navigation system alone is more advanced than our best computers. And it's just for delivering food." "Of course," Wilson replied. "Nobody likes cold pizza. By the way, you might want to update your sensor systems. They're so outdated they're actually giving you false readings about our technology. Those nuclear signatures you detected earlier, that's not from our engines. That's from the radioactive decay of the banana in my lunchbox." As if to prove his point, several screens on the Imperial Bridge suddenly displayed the entire history of human technological development. The Empire's best encryption lasted less than a second against what appeared to be a standard human educational program. "Sorry about the information dump," Wilson said. "Our computer was bored and decided to update your databases. You might want to sit down before reading about our actual propulsion systems. The last alien species that learned about our folded space coffee makers needed therapy." Marcus slowly sat down, took a slice of the perfectly delivered pizza, and began to read. With each passing moment, his understanding of the universe crumbled further. The humans hadn't just surpassed the Empire's technology. They'd gone so far beyond it that their civilian devices were more advanced than the Empire's best military hardware. "Oh," Wilson added cheerfully, "and those transformed ships of yours. The effect should wear off right about now." The space duck, crane, and pizza delivery ship suddenly returned to their original forms. Their crews seemed dazed, and several were holding slices of pizza without knowing where they came from. The gap between their civilizations wasn't just technological. It was practically magical. While Commander Marcus was still processing the reality of human technology, Admiral Wilson decided it was time for a proper introduction. The main screen on the Imperial flagship lit up, showing the human bridge in full detail for the first time. The site was not what they expected. Instead of a military command center, it looked more like a comfortable living room. Officers sat in what appeared to be recliners. Someone was walking around with a coffee pot, refilling mugs. In one corner, an actual cat slept on what looked like a floating cushion of light. "Now then," Wilson said, leaning back in his incredibly comfortable-looking command chair, "I think it's time we had a proper chat about why you're in our testing grounds." Testing grounds. Marcus managed to say between bites of the surprisingly good pizza. "Oh yes." Wilson smiled. "This full sector is one of our kindergarten science fair areas. Those ships you encountered, they're mostly operated by our children's AI homework programs. We use this space to let our kids learn the basics of fleet management." The Empire's tactical officer fainted at this revelation. "But don't worry," Wilson continued. "We kept the really dangerous stuff away. Couldn't have the 5-year-olds playing with galaxy reshaping technology before they learn their multiplication tables, after all." Just then, a small alert popped up on Wilson's screen. "Oh, excuse me a moment." He turned away. "Yes, sweetie. Daddy's a little busy right now." A child's voice came through clearly. "Dad, my space-time homework is acting weird again. Can I borrow your universe in a bottle for show and tell tomorrow?" "Not now, honey. Remember what happened last time. Your teacher is still trying to get back from that parallel dimension." Wilson turned back to the screen. "Sorry about that. Kids, you know how it is." Marcus didn't know how it was. His entire understanding of reality was crumbling with each passing moment. "Sir," his science officer whispered, "I finished analyzing their power systems. It seems they're using the quantum foam of space itself as an energy source. Their ships don't just bend physics, they rewrite it completely." Wilson overheard this and chuckled. "Oh, you're still using quantum foam. How retro. We switched to probability manipulation centuries ago. Much cleaner energy source, though the math can be a bit tricky for beginners." To demonstrate, Wilson snapped his fingers. All the Imperial ships suddenly found themselves with full power restored. Even their battle damage was repaired. "There we go," Wilson said. "Fixed up your ships. Also took the liberty of upgrading your coffee makers. They're still primitive by our standards, but at least now they won't explode if you try to brew a cappuccino." Marcus stared at his ship's systems. Everything was working better than when it was new. Even the persistent squeak in his command chair was gone. Now Wilson's voice turned slightly more serious. "About why we're really here. You see, humanity isn't just another spacefaring race. We're the ones who've been watching over this galaxy's development for the past few millennia." The main screen split to show thousands of human ships suddenly appearing throughout the sector, dropping their advanced stealth fields. Each one was more impressive than the last, though all of them had the same casual, almost relaxed design philosophy. "Those are our actual military vessels," Wilson explained. "We try not to use them much. They tend to make nearby stars nervous. Sentient stars are so sensitive about their personal space these days." Marcus looked out at the vast fleet that had appeared from nowhere. Each ship could probably destroy his entire empire with a thought. And yet here they were, offering pizza and fixing coffee makers. "So," Wilson smiled warmly, "shall we discuss terms? And by terms, I mean, would you like to join our Galactic education program? Your empire shows promise, but your math skills need serious work. We can start you with the basics, like how to properly fold space-time without creating temporal paradoxes." For the first time in Imperial history, a commander of the Empire raised his hand like a schoolchild with a question. The humans, true to form, just laughed good-naturedly and began preparing their first lesson plan. Commander Marcus sat in a conference room aboard the Terran Dawn, staring at his third cup of perfect coffee. The room itself seemed to ignore physics. It was somehow larger on the inside than the entire human ship appeared from the outside. Through the massive windows, he could see his Imperial fleet floating safely, surrounded by thousands of human vessels. "Let me get this straight," Marcus said slowly. Humans have been watching over the galaxy for how long? Admiral Wilson pulled up a holographic display showing the history of the galaxy. But unlike normal holograms, this one seemed to contain actual living moments of time. Oh, about 50,000 years or so, Wilson replied casually, reaching into the hologram and pulling out what looked like a piece of actual history. See this. This was us directing an asteroid away from your homeworld about 30,000 years ago. Your species was just learning to make tools then. The piece of history played out in Wilson's hand like a miniature movie. Marcus watched in awe as a massive asteroid suddenly changed course, guided by invisible forces. We've been maintaining a careful balance, Wilson continued, putting the memory back into the timeline. Helping here, guiding there, making sure nobody accidentally breaks the universe. You'd be surprised how often that almost happens. As if on cue, an alarm sounded. A young human officer rushed in. Sir, we've got another universe fracture in Sector 7. Some civilization just discovered quantum computing without proper containment protocols. Wilson sighed. Again, that's the third one this week. Send in the repair team. And make sure they explain the basics this time. You know, don't run quantum experiments near temporal fault lines. Don't try to divide by zero using quantum processors, the usual stuff. Marcus watched as several human ships casually disappeared, presumably to prevent another universe-ending disaster. You see, Wilson turned back to Marcus. This is why we have to stay hidden most of the time. Every young civilization goes through these phases. They discover something exciting, try to push it too far, and nearly break reality. We're basically the galaxy's safety net. A hologram shifted to show Earth. Marcus gasped. The planet was surrounded by structures that dwarfed his entire empire's engineering projects. Most of them were invisible to normal space, existing in multiple dimensions at once. What you see of Earth, Wilson explained, is just our nature preserve. We keep a small portion of our civilization visible, living simple lives, preserving our connection to our roots. The rest. He waved at the massive structures. Well, let's just say we've been busy. A small alert popped up, showing a student's homework assignment. It was a detailed plan for reorganizing a galaxy's spiral arms to improve its energy efficiency. The teacher's note read, "Good work, but remember to account for dark matter displacement next time. B+. That's my daughter's project," Wilson said proudly. "She's really getting better at cosmic engineering." Marcus looked down at his own empire's achievements, their proudest monuments, their greatest technological advances, and realized they were equivalent to cave paintings compared to human capabilities. "Why reveal yourselves now?" he finally asked. Wilson's expression turned slightly more serious. "Because your empire was about to discover probability manipulation. And trust me, you don't want to mess with that without proper training. The last civilization that tried ended up turning their entire sector into singing potatoes. Took us weeks to sort that out." Through the window, Marcus watched as a human repair ship literally patched a crack in spacetime, using what looked like cosmic duct tape. "So," Wilson smiled, "we're offering your empire a chance to join the galactic community properly. Under supervision, of course. Think of it as cosmic college. We'll teach you the real rules of the universe, help you advance safely. And maybe in a few thousand years, you can join us as guardians." "And if we refuse?" Marcus asked, already knowing the answer. Wilson just pointed to the space duck incident from earlier. "Do you really want to refuse the civilization that can turn your battleships into rubber ducks just by thinking about it?" Marcus looked at his coffee cup, which was somehow keeping the coffee at the perfect temperature without any visible technology. He thought about the repair ships casually fixing the fabric of reality, the children reshaping galaxies for homework, and the casual way humans treated what his empire would consider miracles. "Where do we sign up for classes?" he asked. The humans laughed. Again. 1 month after the first contact incident, Commander Marcus stood in front of his Imperial Council, trying to explain the massive changes happening throughout their territory. Behind him, a human educational officer named Tom floated slightly above the ground, sipping coffee and occasionally correcting Marcus's physics terminology. And so, Marcus concluded, the humans have established learning centers in every major system of our empire. They're calling it Universe 101, Basic Safety and Reality Management for Developing Civilizations. The Imperial Council Chamber, once a symbol of absolute power, now felt rather primitive, especially since Tom had casually fixed their ancient heating system by teaching it to control fusion reactions properly. Show them the progress report, Tom suggested, his coffee cup automatically refilling itself from seemingly nowhere. Marcus activated the new holographic system the humans had installed. It showed various scenes from across the Empire. In one system, Imperial scientists were learning how to properly contain their first quantum experiment. Their human teacher had to stop them 3 times from accidentally creating a miniature Big Bang in the laboratory. In another, engineering students were practicing basic matter manipulation. A sign on the wall read, "Remember, no converting planets into pizza until Level 3 certification." The results have been interesting, Marcus admitted. Last week, one of our top research facilities successfully created their first pocket universe, though it was accidentally filled with tap-dancing penguins. That was actually quite impressive for beginners, Tom interjected. Most first attempts end up with much stranger results. Remember the singing potatoes incident? The council watched in amazement as the hologram showed more scenes, Imperial ships learning to safely bend spacetime, officers attending lectures on proper care and maintenance of sentient stars, and a particularly entertaining clip of a cadet accidentally turning himself into a cloud of sparkly butterflies. "Don't worry," Tom assured them when they gasped at the butterfly incident. "We turned him back, though he still sparkles a bit when he sneezes." One council member raised her hand. "What about our military capability?" Tom grinned. "Oh, that's the fun part. Show them, Marcus." Marcus pressed another button, and his flagship appeared in the hologram. It now sported several upgrades, though most of them seemed oddly focused on comfort rather than weapons. "The humans helped us understand that we were thinking about power all wrong," Marcus explained. "Our new ships don't need weapons because they can just—" "Well, Tom, could you demonstrate?" Tom snapped his fingers. The council chamber suddenly had a fully stocked ice cream bar in one corner. "That's just basic matter manipulation," Tom said. "By the way, try the chocolate swirl. It's made with real Swiss chocolate from Earth. We find that learning goes better with ice cream." The council members stared at their new reality. Their mighty empire, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, was now essentially in kindergarten. And somehow, they were okay with that. "Next week," Marcus continued, "we start learning about proper dimensional folding. The humans say we might even be ready for our first supervised galaxy reorganization project by the end of the century. Assuming you pass your safety exams," Tom added. "We can't have any more accidental duct transformations. The paperwork is terrible." As if to demonstrate the positive changes, a group of Imperial cadets walked past the chamber windows, deeply engaged in a discussion about quantum physics. One of them was floating upside down, having just discovered gravity manipulation. "Our empire is changing," Marcus concluded. "We're learning that true power isn't about conquest. It's about understanding. Though it would help if we could stop accidentally creating singing black holes during practice sessions. Those singing black holes are actually quite popular in some dimensions," Tom noted. "We've got a nice little exchange program going with Universe 27b. They send us their best quantum poetry. We send them our musical stellar phenomena." The council chamber filled with laughter, not the nervous kind from a month ago, but genuine amusement at their new reality. Their mighty empire had indeed found its place in the universe. It just turned out to be in the cosmic equivalent of elementary school. And somewhere in orbit, aboard the Terran Dawn, Admiral Wilson was grading their first test papers, occasionally chuckling at the creative ways Imperial students were discovering to bend reality. The galaxy had changed forever, one physics lesson, one accidental dimension fold, and one perfect cup of coffee at a time.